when I heard the names, the Google, the IBMs, the Boeings, and I was like, wow, not easy to even get those people to talk about blockchain or develop blockchain, let alone to be involved in your governance. And you're smiling because you're probably like, yeah, Brian, it took me 4 years to get that done, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And those are big names, and this model based on Visa is really interesting. I'd love to spend a moment there because I don't know, I didn't read that book and I don't know much about Visa, but from what I understand, it was originally, I think, owned by all the banks. I think maybe that changed afterwards, and it was built because, and again, Visa always flies under the radar. That story isn't told very often, but it obviously allowed them all to collaborate to streamline payments, and it changed the world. And yet, funny enough, we talked about Web 3.0. It's technology that no one of us ever think about how it works or who owns it. We just use it all the time, right? And it clearly works, and we pay a lot of money for that tech, and it's worked for 50 plus years. So maybe you can comment on that, and then how hard it is to get all of these organizations on board, and they're making a big bet on you, like you said. I mean, to do this, they're making a choice, and the next 100 years. I mean, who was in the S&P 500 100 years ago, and are they still here?
Exactly.
That's a good question.
Well, and that's why we put in the term limits. We do understand that there's an importance. It's important to maintain the sort of the dynamic nature of the organization and having those that represent contemporaneous use cases that are important, right? And having them being the ones that are governing over time. So yes, it was difficult. In fact, we had no idea if we could pull it off. When we were talking to people originally about this, early 2017, most people sort of laughed. Mance, do you know how hard it is to get two global companies, global enterprises to work together, let alone pulling them all together to create a council like what you're describing? So nevertheless, we had a vision, and we thought it was the right way to address the market. And we convinced now 25 of them to buy into that vision and go along for the ride. It's been interesting. In the early days, the earliest council members, we added our first 5 council members in Q1, February of 2019. And with one exception, that being DLA Piper, most of them were there just to observe what was going on in the market. They knew it was important, right? They understood that blockchain was going to be a big deal in the long term, and they had some ideas about how they might use blockchain, but they were there to really learn and understand what was going to happen over time. Today, it's very different. When we add council members today, it's typically the case that we are already working with them on real use cases. And it turns out because of that work, it makes sense that they become part of the council and they get to help govern this infrastructure that they're now going to depend on for their products and services. So the market has changed. It has matured in some very fundamental ways. And the infrastructure has improved, right? What we have today, it's taken years to build. And now we have a piece of technology that is just incredible in terms of what it is capable of achieving. So for example, Bitcoin and Ethereum, those were the first 2 big platforms. Bitcoin sort of stands on its own. Ethereum is addressing a different problem than Bitcoin. Bitcoin sort of is thought of as a store of value or an alternative to gold. A lot of people will like to say Ethereum is trying to make it possible for developers to build decentralized applications on this new infrastructure. Well, those networks can process 7 transactions per second globally and 15, Bitcoin 7 and Ethereum 15 per second, right? Per second, 7 and 15 per second on a global basis. And what we have capacity for today in our layer 1 in the beta version of the product is 10,000 transactions per second in terms of capacity. We're processing on the order of somewhere between 100 and 150 transactions per second now in steady state. So, when you just look at the disparity, it's like the difference between a calculator and a computer. And if you have a computer, then the range of applications that can be addressed, that you can solve or address with your technology, of course, is much, much broader than what it is for just a calculator. We knew that going in. That was the vision. We wanted to be able to address mission critical, enterprise grade use cases, and decided to start by inviting those same customers, what would be customers, to the table to be a part of it. And it's working. Today we have a functional council, and we have taken lots of steps to formalize that in various ways. And we're there. We're going to continue adding, but at 25, it's working quite well.